Throughout the 4 years and change of Smash Ultimate's lifespan, a few characters would be the unfortunate target of the competitive scene's ire at a time. In my video on frustrating characters last year, I briefly went over members of the roster whose reputation preceded them, and not in a good way. For the better part of 2022, most of our attention was directed at Fighters Past 2, namely Min Min, Steve, the Aegis, and Kazuya, who, for many, were actively causing the game to be less enjoyable to play and watch. A measurable amount of time has passed since that video, and I would say during that period, our backlash towards the notorious DLC fighters has cooled off a bit, although I'm sure many people still vehemently despise them. The loss of attention can be attributed to players finally buckling down and making a concerted effort in learning counterplay measures to their respective mates. Now, despite all the doomsaying on Twitter, Steve, Kazuya, and Pyra and Mythra's rise to prominence was nowhere near as domineering as the likes of Bayonetta in Smash 4 or Meta Knight in Brawl, and as we enter 2023, a lot of players are getting the hang of how to take on Fighters Past 2. One of the frustrating characters, who appears to still be unsolved however, is Sonic, someone who's always had a rather controversial reputation even from day one. While he isn't anywhere near as popular as most of the Fighters Past 2 characters, I would go so far as to say Sonic is the biggest competitive threat right now for many players, as evident by the likes of Sonic's and Ken, the former in particular growing more and more dominant by the day. As a result, Sonic's placement in tier lists across the board has improved considerably, to the point where many have considered him a top 3 character. So for today, I want to discuss why Sonic has become one of the most powerful characters in Smash Ultimate, as well as one of the most problematic. If you tuned into a live stream of any major tournament in recent months, chances are you've seen Twitch chat blow up with resident sleeper emojis whenever any matches featuring Sonics was played, regardless of who his opponent was. No matter what, the community rallies in favor of Sonic's opponent purely because of the legacy the character has built up over the past few years. During the Wi-Fi era, the decreased reaction time caused by input delay would grant Sonic an overwhelming advantage thanks to his amazing speed. This allowed him to perform quite well during 2020, where Sonic's made a name for himself as a serious threat. At the time, the general opinion on Sonic was that he was a far less viable fighter than in Smash 4, where he was a veritable top tier, witnessing Sonic's time after time getting 4th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st in online brackets with thousands of players came like a lightning bolt on a clear day. Thanks to his amazing speed and evasion, Sonic would often run the clock against his opponent when he found it too risky to win the old-fashioned way. Naturally, this came at the expense of viewer enjoyment, who on many occasions had to sit through half-hour sets watching Sonic spam spin dash for the umpteenth time. The inherently campy nature of the character became a subject for contentious discourse throughout the competitive scene, believing that timing someone out was unsportsmanlike and should not be a legal win condition. Some high-profile tournaments even went as far as to outright ban Sonic altogether, such as Indomic's Atomic Arena during June of 2020, an event that featured over 5,000 attendees. Overall, since there wasn't an abundance of Sonic players at top level, the consensus on whether he should be banned from online play or if TOs should be more strict about camping and timeouts was divisive to say the least, but ultimately Sonic was never formally excluded from official events, and as 2021 rolled around, players didn't believe he would translate his online success into offline tournaments. Yet he did, perhaps even more so. 2021, 2022, and now 2023 has been nothing but an upward trajectory for Sonic. His tournament results have been consistently improving, and with everyone being distracted by Fighters Past 2, he was allowed to fly under the radar for quite some time, but with Sonic's recently taking 3rd at Let's Make Big Moves 2023 and 4th at Genesis 9 getting wins over 2 of the world's 3 best players, MKLeo and Spargo, in the process, there's been newfound discussion over Sonic as a character. What's interesting about LMBN 2023 and Genesis 9 is that Sonic beat MKLeo and lost to Spargo in one of them, and then beat Spargo and lost to MKLeo in the other. But aside from those two, he's been tearing through the likes of Gluttony, Kurama, Riddles, Cosmos. He basically has a win on every single top player besides maybe Aquila. There was actually something Tweak said in one of his podcast episodes that got me thinking a bit.
Whenever I watch Sonic's at a tournament, like, how many people can I say this for? When I watch Sonic's play, I feel like I don't understand why you won't win this set. Like, why you can't just win every set you play. Like, I'll see him versus, like, you know, like MKLeo or Spargo or, like, the best of the best, and I'm like, I see you winning. Like, that is ridiculous.
What he said about Sonics may just be his opinion, but that isn't beyond the realm of possibility. When I watched Sonics at majors and see top players floundering about as he's running circles around them, I had that very same thought. How do you lose as Sonic? Sometimes it feels like you can't. Just about everyone knows that Sonic is unpleasant to fight and unpleasant to watch, but I'd be willing to bet money a lot of people don't know why that's the case. They just think spin dash and call it a day. So what I want to do is break down exactly what makes him such a dangerous and difficult opponent in Smash Ultimate. Sonic is legendary for his mobility, not only in his spin dash but in general. True to his home series, he has the fastest ground speed in the game by a wide margin. He's so fast that his run speed is 1.5 times faster than the second fastest character, Captain Falcon. Sonic can basically travel from one end of Final Destination to the other at a breakneck pace. Ground speed is not the end of it. Sonic has incredible air mobility as well, despite not having the best aerial physics. His down air is a classic diagonal stall and fall, automatically presenting him with a fast landing option that makes it hard to juggle him. His uppy spring jump is reminiscent of Game & Watch's Fire, a vertical rise that doesn't send you into free fall, so he can use whatever attack he pleases. He also possesses a wall jump, giving him extra recovery mix-up options. Then of course, lest we forget, his iconic spin dash and spin charge, both having incredible horizontal and diagonal mobility. Unsurprisingly, Sonic has the best mobility in the game, bar none. There is no one else in the game who can move as fast as he does, not even close. Other characters are touted for their speed and good physics. Captain Falcon, Zero Suit Samus, Sheik, Mithra, and Greninja, to name a few, can easily rush down opponents, but the gap in speed isn't so insurmountable that it prevents you from catching them out or trapping them in place once you do get the advantage. Sonic is one exception to this, having so many ways to rapidly accelerate, decelerate, hold his momentum, go from 0 to 100, etc. that he's quite literally the only character in the game who's impossible to catch and, more importantly, back into a corner. Captain Falcon, for instance, has amazing speed. He can run fast, jump far, and move around like an actual falcon, but it's a lot easier to catch him or keep him trapped in disadvantage because he doesn't have too many ways to mix it up. Most of it is rather linear. For those who watched my Why No One Plays Ganondorf video, you may recall I talked about how more often than not, it's not how much distance you can cover, but how many different ways you can recover that matter more. That holds true in this scenario as well. Sonic's ability to instantly stop and go at his discretion makes it extremely difficult for his opponent to track and intercept his movements, especially because his overwhelming speed gives him the widest threat bubble in the game. You simply cannot afford to recklessly throw out moves no matter how far away you are from him, since he can go from one side of the stage to the other in a matter of frames. Sonic is a living representation of just how much influence mobility and speed have over a game like Smash. That may sound weird considering Sheik is an unpopular character despite having the fastest overall frame data and some of the best physics in the game, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Sonic's extensive access to burst movement options and movement in general gives him the best evasion in the game, period. You can't juggle him because of all the different ways he can alter his trajectory. You can't edge guard him very easily because once again he can alter his trajectory or recover from many different angles, and you can't pressure him in neutral because you can't keep up with him. Being the fastest character in the game ironically lets him slow down a match to whatever pace he wants. If he so chooses, you cannot interact with him. The only time you can accomplish anything is if he decides to interact with you, and due to how tournament matches are decided, he eventually has to. In theory, however, he doesn't. This is why he's the only character who can reliably pursue a timeout strategy. Keyword reliably. Sure, Captain Falcon can run circles around Incineroar, but for reasons I mentioned earlier, the gap in speed isn't impossible to overcome for Incineroar. That being said, there's something I believe needs to be clarified about Sonic, and by extension players like Sonics who get flamed out for running the clock. Contrary to popular belief, Sonics doesn't intentionally pursue a timeout win condition. Playing Sonic optimally just so happens to be a very time-consuming method. With that much speed, the safest way to assure victory is to wait for your opponent to get impatient and overcommit on a risky call-out in neutral. You'll notice how hesitant pro players are to approach Sonic because they know that if they mess up, he can drag them across the stage for dozens of percent. Take a look at this example right here. Leo and Sonics are in neutral, but Leo doesn't feel comfortable approaching Sonics while he's charging Spin Dash. Eventually, he tries to make something happen by running in for a rapid jab. Sonics blocks it and then goes for a punish. It's only a dash attack, but throughout the entire set, that's sort of what happens. Leo throws out a risky move and gets punished by Sonics, or Sonics throws out a risky move and gets punished by Leo. Battling Sonic essentially boils down to a game of chicken. Both players are waiting for their opponent to mess up so they can go for the attack. And because neither player is willing to budge, sometimes you go 5, 10, even 15 seconds without a meaningful neutral interaction. That of course applies to every matchup, but it matters more for Sonic due to how fast he is. If he has a stock or percent lead, there's more pressure on his opponent to make a play happen, since if nothing happens, Sonic will win when time runs out. Vice versa, if his opponent has a stock or percent lead, there's more pressure on Sonic to make a play happen or else he loses the match. Funnily enough, there's an excerpt in Sonic's playstyle section that points out his tendency to become impatiently aggressive when down a stock or percent, allowing other players to camp him out as well. In that same set between Leo and Sonics at Genesis, during Game 4, Leo manages to run the clock on Sonics by barely approaching after he gets a lead, placing the onus on Sonics to make a move first, and for Sonic, he generally doesn't want to attack first. He's the best whiff punisher in the game, but that can be hard to exercise if his opponent never puts themselves in a position to be punished. On the subject of punish, that's where Sonic's mobility differs from Sheik or other characters. Sonic is boxer frame data, so the majority of his attacks have startup frames in the low single digits. Jab is frame 3, all of his tilts are frame 6, dash attack is frame 5, stuff like that. His skill power is only about as good as Mario's, but his damage output is in the range of Wolf's. A single win in neutral can easily rack about 50 to 60%, whereas for Sheik it's only about 30 to 40. Moreover, most of Sonic's kills come in the form of edge guards. Spin dash and spin charge can drag his opponent across and usually off stage, letting him close out stocks with otherwise weak attacks like forward air because they're so far off stage. If he doesn't, it's not rare for his opponent to survive well past 150%, but therein lies why he feels so threatening regardless of the percent than like a Pikachu or Sheik. His attacks may not be the most remarkable, but they're some of the best in terms of positional knockback. Spin charge throws you into the perfect spot to get hit by something like forward air. Falling there easily leads into like a back air. Spin dash opens up a follow-up from any of his aerials or even homing attack, and thanks to spring jump, he can chase after opponents way high up in the sky. Speaking of spring jump, it's one of the best gimping tools of all time. Anyone with an exploitable recovery knows the pain of being doinked by the falling spring. In essence, Sonic has rather mediocre kill power compared to your hard hitters like Roy or Wolf, but he makes up for that by having more edge guarding options than 5 characters combined. He can chase after his opponents in disadvantage even when they're at kill percent and edge guard them for years. In totality, you have someone with an almost absurd range of edge guarding tools who is also a near uncontestable neutral game full of mix-up and approach options that lead into those edge guarding scenarios. Not only that, but his poor durability is compensated by the fact that most characters can't hit you even if they try. If played perfectly, Sonic may very well be the best character in the entire game. With all that being said, what exactly is the problem with Sonic? I'm sure you've seen videos in the past complaining about how he has an outdated moveset in the same way that Kirby does, but my issue with Sonic isn't that he has an outdated moveset or that he times people out, not entirely anyway. It's that Sonic as a character explicitly discourages interaction. Like I said earlier, if you so choose to, you can get a small percent lead and just camp the entire game, and he's the only character who can consistently pull this off. Every other character seen as campy still has to interact with their opponent in order to win for the simple reason that they don't have the luxury not to. In theory, Samus can camp by running away and tossing projectiles until the end of time, but she doesn't have the mobility to get away with that even against the slowest characters. You might say Wario is a very campy character, but in his defense, his camping is ultimately meant to set him up for a successful interaction. Because Sonic has the choice to time people out, pragmatically speaking, you should just camp every single game. It's a very degenerate and frankly scummy strategy, but Sonic can do it if the player is willing to. That's the problem. No character should be allowed to deliberately pursue a win condition that actively discourages interacting with your opponent. Technically, Sonic has to interact with his opponent at least once to get a stock lead or even just a percent lead, but he has the perfect set of tools to acquire that percent lead, and those very same tools can be used to prevent his opponent from ever getting one back on him. Thankfully, no matter how much copium these Sonic's haters shoot up, he doesn't go for that. Despite that, however, Sonic's entire playstyle still echoes the sentiment of wanting to engage in combat as infrequently as possible, even if you're trying to win the old-fashioned way. Each and every time you interact with your opponent, you run the risk of losing that interaction and taking damage or losing your stock. The idea is to expose yourself as little as possible to maximize your risk to reward ratio, hence why projectiles or disjoints are so desirable. The way Sonic maximizes risk to reward is by taking advantage of his superior mobility, consequently leading to what many people think is camping. Sonic's at his strongest when playing the game of chicken against his opponent. Ordinarily, that wouldn't be a bad thing, but since he's the only character who can play like this to that extent, that's what makes it a problem. It artificially skews player agency in favor of Sonic by an unacceptable margin. Can it be overcome? Absolutely, but I don't think I know a single player who is excited to fight Sonics. Now personally, I enjoy watching Sonics play because I can understand the thought process behind what he does, but I would never in a million years want him as my opponent. I might be wrong. For all I know, maybe Spargo, Leo, Gluto, or Light have the time of their lives fighting Sonics. I seriously doubt that though. Fighting games are supposed to be a dance between players, an equal exchange of actions and reactions. Sonic fundamentally goes against this principle. It's the same reason why I think Steve and Kazuya are badly designed characters. Their properties disproportionately skew the balance of agency between player interactions that in most cases the only way to win is to not interact. No character epitomizes this mentality more than Sonic. So that's gonna be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on Sonic in the comments down below, and just remember, let's not make any of this personal. I respect Sonic's, Ken, and by extension every Sonic player, as much as I hate their main. But if you have anything critical to say, make sure it's towards Sonic, not the people playing them. But aside from that, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, I really appreciate it. Also consider following me on Twitter at Vars, joining my Discord server, and checking out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in the next one. Take care.